Welcome in, guys. Adam here, the Orlando drummer. Good to see you, and thank you for tuning in to another drum lesson. So the 6-stroke roll for me is a rudiment that I definitely overuse, and I think that's because it's just my favorite rudiment. I learned it when I was really young, and I spent a lot of time toying around with this pattern. Now, in today's lesson, I'm going to show you guys 3 specific tricks that help me get the 6-stroke roll off of the pad and onto the drum set in some more creative and useful ways. If you guys are ready to learn 3 new 6-stroke roll hacks, let's get started. I call this idea the kick 6. What we're doing is taking a regular 6-stroke roll, played as right, left, left, right, right, left, and we're accenting the first and the last note of that rudiment, a really common thing to do with the 6-stroke roll. Now I want you to add 2 kick drums before this rudiment, so we're now going to have an 8-note linear pattern. We're going to play this in 16th notes around 100 beats per minute, but one catch. I want you to take all of the accented notes and I want you to move them to different surfaces around the kit while leaving all of the other notes of the 6-stroke roll ghost noted down on the snare. If you really take the time to experiment with this, there's a lot of cool options for 16th note fills, so I think you guys will get a lot just out of this little chunk, but don't worry, I'll show you the lick that you just saw here in a minute. 100 BPM, 16th notes, let's improvise this around the drum set. So that concept can clearly be used to create all sorts of different 16th note fills, but specifically with this 8-note linear pattern, there's a 32nd note chop that I like to play quite a bit. So for this one, in 32nd notes, we're going to have to play that 8-note pattern 4 times in a row, 1 time per beat. And each time you play the pattern, I want you to take all the notes of the 6-stroke roll and move them up to the hi-hat, except for the left-hand diddles. Those are going to stay down on the snare as ghost notes. Now, this is a lot easier said than done, but I'll give you one tip. If you get down the backhand or the flick technique on the hi-hat, it makes this way easier at higher speeds. Let's try this out as a 32nd note fill, 50 and 75 BPM. For our second trick, I figured we needed to get a triplet chop in here, so this one is based in 16th note triplets. I want you to keep the 6-stroke roll exactly the same, with the first and last note accented, but you're going to move all of those notes up to the hi-hat. This one's pretty easy, so let's just try it out as a 16th note triplet fill at 75 BPM. Now, I know that's obviously pretty easy, so what's the trick here? Well, the trick really lies in your right hand. I want you to think about that right hand accent every time the 6-stroke roll passes, which falls on the downbeats inside of this whole measure of music. That right hand, we're going to think about taking that and shooting it off of the hi-hat onto different surfaces around the kit. Obviously, you can go to any of your toms, but think about things like going to a cymbal and putting a kick drum underneath it. Think about what if you brought that right hand down to the snare drum on 2 and 4. Then you have a pretty cool triplet groove. There's a ton of options here, guys. So let's experiment at 75 BPM, improvising this as a 16th note triplet fill, and then just for fun, we'll crank it up to 100 BPM. And our last 6-stroke roll hack is back inside of 30-second notes. For this one, I just want you to play the 6-stroke roll 5 times in a row. That gets us 30 notes into a measure of 30-second notes. And for those last 2 notes, we're just going to add a right-left to the end. Now, I still want you to maintain those accents on the 6-stroke roll, the first and the last note of the rudiment. So this creates some interesting peaks inside of this measure of music. If you're having trouble hearing this, I would recommend changing your metronome to 1/8 notes instead of quarter notes. It makes it a lot easier to hear this sort of 6-note spacing pass through the bar of 30-second notes. We're going to keep all these notes on the snare, and I'll show you what it sounds like around 60 BPM. Now, you're not going to believe how easy this is, but all you have to do to make this lick sound super dope is take your left hand accent inside the 6-stroke roll, and every time that happens, just move it up to the hi-hat. Now, ideally, you want to bark that hi-hat or slightly open it every time you hit it with that left hand, but in 30-second notes at high speeds can be a little tough, so you'll have to have a chat with your left foot about that one. But if you can sneak that left hand up to the hi-hat at all, you'll immediately hear how cool this is, and it's an awesome trick to have in your arsenal. For me, this opened up a lot of options for the 6-stroke roll, both in triplets and in 30-second notes. We're going to try this out as a 30-second note fill, 50 and 75 BPM. Let's do it. All right, guys, that's all I have for you in today's lesson, but I can't thank you enough for tuning in. It is very, very much appreciated. If you have any suggestions for future lesson topics, make sure to leave those in the comments below. And if you're looking for more content like this, come join me on OrlandoDrummer.com, where you will find hundreds of drum lessons already waiting for you and a brand new drum lesson every week. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Adam here, the Orlando Drummer, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Later.